What if the empty space in your garden today could become a fresh harvest before Labor Day? That bare container, the row where spring lettuce used to grow, or the corner where an early crop gave up in the heat, may look finished, but it is not finished yet. There is still time to plant food, watch it grow, and carry something real into the kitchen before the last big holiday weekend of summer. The secret is not simply choosing crops that are called fast. You need the right variety, the right starting method, and the right definition of harvest. Some crops can be pulled or cut as a complete harvest. Some should be eaten young. Others may only give you their first tender leaves or fruits before the deadline, but those first pickings still count. This is where many gardeners lose valuable time. They see a crop name on a list, buy the first packet they find, and assume every variety grows at the same speed. It does not. 2 seed packets can carry the same crop name and still give you very different chances of harvesting before Labor Day. Look for words such as early, baby, compact, bush, short season, or slow bolting. Then read the maturity information carefully. In some cases, the number begins at sowing. In others, especially with transplants, it may be counted from the time the seedling goes into the garden. That number is also an estimate, not a promise. Heat, drought, root disturbance, pests, poor soil, and short days later in the season can all slow a crop down. Before you plant anything, check your local first frost date and count the growing days you realistically have left. Give yourself a safety buffer rather than planning down to the final day. Then decide what kind of harvest you are aiming for. A complete harvest means pulling the whole radish, cutting a young head, or removing the entire plant. A baby harvest means eating the crop before it reaches full size. A first picking means the plant stays in the garden while you take the first leaves, beans, cucumbers, zucchini, or okra pods. That simple change in expectations opens the door to far more possibilities. Let us begin with one of the fastest and most dependable complete harvests on the list: radishes. Radishes are ideal for a short summer window because they are direct sown. They do not need weeks of indoor preparation, and the small-rooted varieties can move from seed to harvest quickly when conditions cooperate. But summer radishes require more attention than spring radishes. Hot soil, irregular watering, and delayed harvesting can turn a crisp root into something overly sharp, woody, hollow, or spongy. Choose a small, quick variety rather than a large storage radish. Prepare loose soil so the root can expand without pushing against hard clods. If the bed is compacted, loosen the top several inches and remove stones. Avoid loading the soil with high nitrogen fertilizer. Too much nitrogen can produce an impressive canopy of leaves, while the root remains disappointing. Sow the seeds directly, cover them at the depth recommended on the packet, and give each plant enough room to form a root. Crowded radishes may make plenty of leaves, but very little underneath. The most important summer habit is consistent moisture. The seed zone cannot dry out during germination, and the developing roots should not swing repeatedly between bone dry and saturated. Check the bed with your finger instead of judging only by the surface color. A thin surface can look dry while the seed zone remains moist, or it can look dark after a light sprinkle while the soil underneath is still dry. Water gently enough that you do not expose or wash the seeds into clusters. Once the shoulders of the radishes begin to rise near the soil surface, inspect them. Do not wait for every root in the row to reach the same size. Pull the largest first and let the smaller ones continue. This creates space and prevents the earliest roots from sitting too long in hot soil. The leaves may look ordinary above ground, but the real countdown is happening underneath. If your hottest afternoon sun is intense, a position with morning sun and some late-day protection may improve quality. Radishes can also grow well in a container filled with loose mix, provided the pot drains freely and the roots have enough depth. Radishes hide their harvest below the soil, but arugula shows you almost immediately when it is becoming useful. Arugula earns a place in this Labor Day plan not because you must wait for a large mature plant, but because the young leaves can be harvested early. That makes it valuable in small spaces, window boxes, shallow containers, and narrow gaps between slower crops. Sow arugula directly in a moist seed bed and cover the seeds lightly. It is easy to sow too much because the seeds are small. If the planting becomes crowded, thin it early. Those thinnings can become the first tiny harvest instead of going to waste. If you want repeated harvests, leave enough space for the remaining plants to build a small rosette. Take the outer leaves while the center continues growing, or cut above the growing point so the plant has a chance to return. Summer changes the flavor and behavior of arugula. Heat often makes the leaves more peppery, and long hot days can push the plants toward flowering. If you prefer a milder flavor, harvest the leaves younger. Give the plants morning light and protection from the harshest afternoon sun in very hot regions. A light shade cloth can help, but do not create a dark, stagnant environment. The plants still need air movement and enough light to make sturdy leaves. Instead of sowing the entire packet at once, plant a short row or a small section of a container, then sow another section later. Succession planting reduces the chance that all of your arugula becomes ready, bitter, or overgrown at the same moment. It also protects you from losing the whole crop to one hot spell or one pest problem. Arugula may be one of the earliest bowls of greens you carry inside, long before the fruiting crops have filled their containers. The next crop takes more space, but it can add something completely different to your harvest basket. Bush beans. For a short planting window, bush beans usually make more sense than pole beans. Pole beans spend time building long vines and a support system before they reach full production. Bush beans stay compact and can begin flowering and setting pods sooner, depending on the variety and weather. Beans prefer warm soil, so midsummer planting can work in places where enough warm weather remains. Sow them directly because the roots do not appreciate unnecessary disturbance. Plant into moist, well-drained soil, but do not keep the seedbed waterlogged. Bean seeds can rot when they sit in cold or saturated soil, and even in summer they suffer if heavy irrigation removes the air from the root zone. Give the plants enough spacing for air to move between the leaves. Dense foliage that stays wet can invite disease. Avoid pushing them with excessive nitrogen. Beans are grown for pods, not for a mountain of soft leaves. A balanced soil with compost is usually more useful than repeated heavy feeding. Once flowers appear, keep moisture more even. Severe drying during flowering and pod formation can reduce the harvest. Begin checking the plants as soon as small pods form. Pick them while they are tender, rather than waiting for maximum size. A pod that becomes thick and tough has already used time the garden cannot recover. Frequent picking also encourages the plants to continue producing. In a warm region with a long summer, bush beans can make a meaningful contribution before Labor Day. In a cool northern location with a rapidly approaching fall, they are a more ambitious choice. This is why your local calendar matters more than a national list. Bush beans can grow in a wide container or grow bag, but a narrow pot with only 1 or 2 plants may not produce enough to justify the space. A small block of plants tends to give a more useful picking. Protect young seedlings from rabbits and other animals, and inspect the undersides of leaves if chewing or stippling appears. Speed does not matter if the seedlings disappear during their first week. At this point, the crops may sound simple, but the first major obstacle is often not the variety. It is germination in hot soil. A gardener can choose the perfect seed and still lose a week because the surface dries before the root emerges. In July, the top layer of a raised bed or container can heat and dry far faster than it did in spring. A quick spray in the morning may darken the surface without keeping the actual seed zone moist through the afternoon. Prepare the bed before opening the seed packet. Water the soil deeply enough that the area below the seed will hold moisture. Let excess water drain, then create the furrow or planting holes. Sow at the correct depth. Tiny seeds should not be buried as deeply as beans or squash. Cover them with fine soil or seed starting mix rather than hard clods. Press gently so the seed has contact with moist soil, but do not compact the bed into a crust. After sowing, water with a gentle rose, wand, or fine spray. The goal is to moisten the planting zone without moving the seeds. Then monitor that zone, especially during the hottest part of the day. This may mean checking more than once, not automatically watering more than once. If the soil is still moist, leave it alone. If the seed zone is drying, water gently. Consistent moisture is different from constant saturation. Temporary shade can be extremely useful. A light shade cloth, an elevated board, or a piece of breathable material can reduce direct sun on the seedbed during germination. The cover should not crush the soil, trap excessive heat, or block all airflow. Remove it or raise it as soon as seedlings emerge so they receive adequate light. Seedlings grown in protection should also be introduced gradually to stronger sun. A plant that germinates in shade and is suddenly exposed to a blazing afternoon can be damaged in a single day. Avoid covering tiny seeds with a thick layer of mulch. Mulch is valuable around established plants, but a heavy mat over a newly sown row can prevent fragile seedlings from reaching the surface. Once the plants are up and growing, add mulch around them without burying their stems. These first few days are where the Labor Day harvest is often won or lost. Now consider baby kale. If the goal were a giant, mature kale plant in just a few weeks, the crop would be less convincing. But the goal is tender baby leaves, and that changes everything. Baby kale can fit into a late summer planting because the leaves become edible long before the plant reaches full size. Sow kale in a small block, tray, or container. You can plant more closely for baby leaves than for mature kale, but do not create a solid carpet where every seedling competes for light and airflow. Thin the stand while the plants are young. Those thinnings can be washed and added to a salad. The remaining plants then have space to keep producing. Watch for cabbage family pests from the moment the leaves appear. Flea beetles can pepper young leaves with tiny holes. Caterpillars can remove much of a seedling overnight. A lightweight insect barrier, placed immediately after sowing, can protect the crop if pests are common in your garden, but it must be secured at the edges and used before insects are trapped underneath. If the bed recently held diseased brassicas, clean away damaged leaves and avoid pretending that a new packet of seed will erase the old problem. Heat can make kale grow more slowly and the leaves less tender. Morning sun with some afternoon relief may help in the hottest climates. Water deeply enough to support the roots, but do not keep the crown constantly wet. Harvest the largest young leaves while leaving the center intact. You can also cut a section for baby greens and allow the rest to continue into fall. That is one of the strongest reasons to plant kale now. Even if the Labor Day harvest is modest, the plants may become more productive as temperatures cool. Cucumbers bring a larger reward and a larger risk. A cucumber vine planted now can produce its first tender fruits before Labor Day in a warm region with the right variety, but this is not equally realistic everywhere. Choose a short season, compact, or bush variety when the planting window is tight. A long vining variety selected for an extended season may spend too much time building its framework. You can direct sow cucumbers into warm soil or transplant a young, healthy seedling if one is available. Avoid old, root-bound transplants. A stressed cucumber with circling roots may take longer to recover than a seed sown directly. If you transplant, disturb the root ball as little as possible and water it in thoroughly. Provide support early. A trellis keeps vines and fruit off the ground, improves airflow, and makes it easier to inspect for cucumber beetles and disease. Do not wait until the vines are tangled to force them onto a support. Keep moisture consistent once flowering begins. Irregular watering can stress the plant and reduce fruit quality. Mulch around established vines to slow evaporation, but leave space around the stem. If an earlier cucumber crop failed from beetles, bacterial wilt, or severe disease, do not simply put the new crop into the same conditions and expect a different result. Remove diseased debris, inspect nearby volunteer plants, and consider another location or container. Watch flowers carefully. The first flowers may be male, which is normal. Female flowers carry a tiny swelling behind the blossom. When pollination is poor, that small fruit may yellow and drop. Harvest cucumbers while they are young and tender. Waiting for supermarket size is unnecessary, especially in a countdown garden. Frequent picking can support continued production. In the south, or another long summer climate, cucumbers may transform the final basket. In a cooler region, treat them as a calculated experiment and rely on greens and roots for the dependable part of the harvest. If cucumbers feel too risky, mustard greens return us to speed and flexibility. Mustard can be harvested as small leaves, larger leaves, or a whole young planting. For this Labor Day plan, the young leaves are the safest target. They are useful before the plants reach full size, and they can fit into containers or short rows. Sow the seeds in moist soil and thin the seedlings before crowding weakens them. Use the thinnings. Small mustard leaves can be milder and more tender than older leaves, especially when the weather is hot. Heat can intensify the flavor and push plants toward flowering, so harvest early instead of waiting for a perfect large leaf. Flea beetles and caterpillars can damage mustard quickly. Inspect the leaves often, because a small seedling cannot lose much tissue and continue growing at full speed. A protective fabric can help, or you can use physical removal and other controls appropriate for your garden. Keep the bed clean, but do not strip away every bit of organic cover once the plants are established. A light mulch around the seedlings can stabilize moisture. Mustard works well for succession planting. Sow a small patch, then another patch later. This spreads the harvest and reduces the chance that all of it becomes overly strong at the same time. Cut individual leaves or harvest a whole young cluster. The important point is to use the crop while it is at its best, not to keep it in the bed simply because the calendar says more growth should be better. Baby beets create the most important shift in this entire list. Many gardeners remove beets from a short season plan because they think only about large roots. But beets offer two useful harvests. The leaves are edible, and the roots can be taken at a smaller size. The biggest advantage does not always belong to the crop with the shortest maturity number. Sometimes it belongs to the plant that gives you more than one way to harvest it. What looks like one beet seed is often a cluster that can produce more than one seedling. This is why a row may emerge crowded even when it was sown carefully. Thin the seedlings while they are small. Those tender thinnings can be eaten. Then leave enough space for the remaining roots to swell. If you want both greens and roots, do not repeatedly strip every leaf from each plant. Leaves power, root, growth. Take a small number from selected plants, or designate one section for baby greens and another for roots. Keep the soil loose, evenly moist, and free of competition. Hard, dry soil can slow root expansion and create uneven growth. Choose a quick variety and accept baby roots as a successful result. A small beet can be roasted whole, sliced, or added to a mixed harvest. In a deep container, the crop can perform well if the mix drains freely and does not compact. Thin the plants on time. Crowded beets may produce an impressive mass of leaves but very little root growth. The first beet harvest may not look like a basket of large roots. It may begin as a handful of colorful leaves and tiny plants removed during thinning. That still converts seed, soil, water, and an empty space into food. If the roots need longer than Labor Day, the remaining plants can continue toward fall while you have already taken a useful early harvest. Basil changes the mood of the garden because it loves the warmth that challenges several cool season crops. A healthy basil transplant can begin contributing leaves quickly, and even seed-grown basil can become useful before it turns into a large bush. For the fastest result, begin with a vigorous young plant that has not started flowering and is not severely root-bound. Plant basil in warm, well-drained soil and give it strong light. In extremely hot climates, late afternoon protection can reduce stress, especially in containers. Pots heat rapidly and may need closer moisture monitoring than garden soil. Water at the base when possible, and do not keep the roots constantly saturated. The way you harvest basil determines what happens next. Do not remove random single leaves forever from one tall stem. Pinch or cut just above a pair of leaves. New branches can form from the nodes below the cut, creating a fuller plant and more future harvest points. Once flower buds appear, remove them if leaf production is the goal. Flowering is not a disaster, and pollinators may enjoy it, but the plant begins redirecting energy and the leaves may become less abundant. Use basil often. Take small harvests for salads, sauces, sandwiches, or pesto rather than waiting for one enormous cutting. This repeated harvest pattern is perfect for a short deadline. One basil plant may contribute several times while a radish contributes once. The quantity at each cutting may be modest, but the total value across several weeks can be significant. We have now reached the central strategy of the video. Harvesting young is not a compromise when time is limited. It is a deliberate method. Grocery store size is not the only definition of success. A baby leaf, a small root, or the first tender pod can be the correct harvest for the season you actually have. There are 4 useful ways to harvest early. The first is thinning. When crowded seedlings are removed, use them if the crop is edible at that stage and the plants are healthy. The second is taking outer leaves while protecting the center. This works with kale, chard, and several other greens. The third is cutting above a growing point, so the plant can produce again, as with basil and some leafy crops. The fourth is picking roots or fruits at a smaller, tender stage, rather than holding them for maximum size. Early harvesting also reduces risk. A leaf eaten today cannot be destroyed by next week's pest outbreak. A tender cucumber picked now cannot become overgrown during a hot weekend. A radish pulled when ready cannot turn woody while you wait for the rest of the row. This does not mean stripping plants before they have enough leaf area to recover. Every harvest should leave the plant capable of continuing if repeated production is the goal. Think of the final Labor Day basket as a collection of small wins. It may contain a bunch of radishes, a bowl of arugula, beet thinnings, basil, a few handfuls of beans, and the first fruits from a warm season crop. It does not need to depend on one giant harvest. Diversity is what makes the plan more reliable. Bok choy is one of the clearest examples of harvesting young. Waiting for a large, dense head in midsummer may be unrealistic in many places. A baby bok choy plant, however, can become useful much sooner. Choose a small or baby variety and focus on tender leaves and crisp, young stems. Bok choy belongs to the cabbage family, so it shares several challenges with kale and mustard. Flea beetles, caterpillars, and other chewing insects can slow young plants. Use protection early if these pests are common. Heat can also trigger bolting, especially when plants experience stress. A dry period, followed by heavy watering or a sudden temperature swing, may push a young plant toward flowering. Sow a small amount directly, or start seedlings in a cooler protected place if outdoor soil is too hot for reliable germination. Do not leave seedlings in tiny cells until they become root-bound. Transplant them while young, water them in, and provide temporary shade as they adjust. In a hot region, morning sun and afternoon protection can help them hold quality. Harvest an entire baby plant at the soil line, or take selected outer leaves and allow the center to continue. The whole plant approach gives a clean, satisfying harvest. The outer leaf approach extends production but requires more space and patience. You can also stagger sowings, placing a small second planting after the first is established. As the weather begins to cool, later bok choy may perform even better than the first batch. Zucchini is the boldest gamble on the list. When it succeeds, a single healthy plant can change the size of the harvest quickly. When it fails, it can consume valuable space and time. Choose zucchini only when your region still has a strong stretch of warm weather and you can give the plant the room, sun, and protection it needs. A compact, early variety is better for this challenge than a sprawling type selected for a long season. You can sow directly into warm soil or use a young transplant. Avoid a large, root-bound seedling. Squash dislikes being held too long in a small pot, and the recovery period can erase the time you hope to save. Before planting, consider what happened in that bed earlier. If squash vine borers, squash bugs, or severe powdery mildew destroyed the first crop, do not assume the calendar has reset the pest pressure. Remove old vines and debris. Inspect the area. Consider a different bed, a large container, or another crop if the pest problem remains intense. Zucchini needs consistent moisture and enough fertility to support large leaves and fruit. Water at the soil level and provide room for airflow. Learn the difference between male and female flowers. Male flowers often appear first. A female flower has a small, immature zucchini behind it. If that fruit yellows and collapses, poor pollination may be the cause. Where pollinators are limited, hand pollination can help. Harvest zucchini small and tender. An oversized fruit is not a better Labor Day harvest. It has simply occupied the plant longer and may have tough seeds. Check the plant often because fruits can enlarge rapidly in warm weather. In a long summer climate, zucchini can be spectacular. In a short northern season, choose it only after the reliable greens and roots are already covered. Green onions prove that even a narrow container can contribute. You do not need to wait for large bulbs. The useful harvest is the slender white stem and green leaves. This makes green onions suitable for window boxes, container edges, and small gaps where a zucchini would never fit. Starting from seed is possible, but it may not be the fastest route when the deadline is close. Sets or healthy transplants can shorten the wait. You can also regrow the base of a kitchen green onion, but do not expect endless production from a glass of water. The stored energy eventually runs low. Move rooted bases into soil if you want stronger continued growth. Plant green onions relatively close when your goal is a slender harvest rather than a large bulb. Keep the soil evenly moist and well drained. Containers can dry quickly, but soggy soil encourages weak roots and decay. Weed carefully because young onion plants do not compete well. Harvest the entire plant when the stem reaches a useful size, or cut green tops selectively while leaving enough growth for the plant to continue. The flavor, convenience, and small footprint make green onions valuable even if the total weight is not large. A few fresh stems can improve eggs, soups, salads, grilled vegetables, and many other meals. This is a reminder that harvest value is not measured only in pounds. Turnip greens offer a similar lesson to beets. The root may need more time than you have, but the leaves become edible earlier. Sow turnips directly, thin the seedlings, and use the healthy thinnings. Then decide which plants are being grown mainly for greens and which are being saved for roots. If roots are still the goal, do not repeatedly remove most of the leaves. The plant needs them to store energy below ground. Take a limited number of outer leaves, or dedicate a separate section to leaf production. Young leaves are generally more tender. Heat can intensify flavor, while cooler weather later may improve sweetness and texture. Turnip seedlings can suffer from flea beetles and caterpillars, so inspect the planting before damage becomes severe. A small leaf full of holes has little surface left to power growth. Use a barrier or other appropriate controls early. Keep the soil moist enough for steady development, but avoid waterlogging. This crop can bridge the seasons. You may harvest greens before Labor Day and leave selected roots in the soil for later. In that sense, the planting is not racing toward one final date. Labor Day is simply the first checkpoint. The same row can contribute again as autumn arrives. Okra is the crop that loves the heat, causing trouble for lettuce, bok choy, and arugula. In the south and other long summer regions, okra can be an excellent late planting. In a cool northern area, it may be one of the least reliable choices on the list. Okra needs sustained warmth, strong sun, and enough time to establish before producing pods. Choose an early or compact variety if your season is limited. A healthy transplant can save time, but only if it has been grown well and is not stressed. Okra dislikes cold soil, so midsummer warmth can work in its favor. Plant it in a large container or open bed with good drainage. Do not keep the roots constantly wet simply because the weather is hot. Once okra begins flowering, inspect it frequently. The pods grow quickly and become fibrous when left too long. Pick them while they are young and tender, using gloves if the plant irritates your skin. Frequent harvesting encourages continued flowering and pod production. Okra can become tall, so consider its position. Do not place it where it will shade low-growing crops that need light. Compact varieties are easier in containers, but the container must still be large enough to support the plant and resist tipping. If your region stays hot well beyond Labor Day, okra may continue producing long after the other summer crops slow down. If cool nights are approaching quickly, choose another crop and do not let a national list pressure you into an unsuitable planting. Now, pause and narrow the list according to your climate. First, find the average first frost date for your location. Then count the days from planting to that date, not just to Labor Day. Subtract a safety buffer for slower growth, weather disruptions, and establishment. Compare varieties within each crop. One bush bean may be much earlier than another. One cucumber may be compact and quick, while another is designed for a long season. One lettuce may resist bolting better than a tender spring type. Read the seed packet language closely. Early, baby, bush, compact, and short season can be useful clues. Slow bolting is valuable for summer lettuce. Heat tolerant matters, but it does not mean the plant enjoys unlimited heat or dry soil. Disease resistance may be important if a previous crop failed from a known disease. No single word on a packet replaces observation, but these clues help you choose between similar options. Match the crop to the space. A narrow window box is better for arugula, mustard, baby kale, lettuce, or green onions than zucchini. A large grow bag may support bush beans or a compact cucumber. An open, sunny bed may be the place for okra or squash. Do not squeeze a large plant into a small container and then blame the crop for growing slowly. Also, match the crop to the temperature trend. If your days are still very hot and your nights remain warm, basil, beans, cucumbers, zucchini, and okra may have a chance. If the hottest part of summer is passing and nights are beginning to cool, radishes, kale, mustard, bok choy, turnip greens, chard, and heat-tolerant lettuce may become more attractive. The best Labor Day garden is not the one that plants all 15. It is the one that chooses the right few. Swiss chard is one of the most forgiving leafy choices for this transition. It often handles summer warmth better than lettuce and can continue growing as fall arrives. You can harvest it as baby leaves or allow the plants to become larger and take the outer leaves repeatedly. Chard seeds, like beet seeds, can produce more than one seedling from a cluster. Thin them early so the plants are not locked together. Use the healthy thinnings as baby greens. If growing larger plants, give each one enough room to create a strong crown and broad leaves. Harvest from the outside. Cut or twist away the oldest useful leaves near the base without damaging the small leaves in the center. The center is the future harvest. Taking every large leaf at once can slow the plant, especially during heat. A steady pattern of moderate harvesting is usually better than stripping the plant. Chard grows well in a generous container with fertile, well-drained mix. Keep moisture consistent so the stems remain tender and the leaves do not repeatedly wilt. Mulch around established plants to slow evaporation. Inspect for leaf miners and other pests, and remove badly damaged leaves before problems spread. The beauty of chard in this plan is that it does not need to finish by Labor Day. You can take baby leaves before the holiday and continue harvesting larger leaves afterward. It is a crop that makes the countdown less stressful because the date marks the beginning of production, not the end. The final crop is heat-tolerant lettuce, and it brings us back to the most important germination lesson. Lettuce belongs on this list, but planting it exactly as you would in cool spring weather can waste some of the most valuable days you have left. The seed is small, the soil surface dries quickly, and excessive heat can reduce germination. Choose a loose leaf, slow bolting, or heat-tolerant variety. Do not expect every plant to form a dense head before Labor Day. Baby leaves and repeated outer leaf harvests are the realistic target. Sow shallowly according to the packet directions. Do not bury the seed under a heavy layer of soil. In very hot weather, start lettuce in a tray or container placed in a cooler, bright location. Then move the seedlings gradually toward their growing position. You can also sow outdoors where the bed receives morning sun and afternoon shade. Keep the seed zone consistently moist using a gentle spray. Temporary shade over the seed bed can help, but remove or raise it after germination so the seedlings receive light and airflow. Once the plants are established, do not let them wilt severely and then flood them. That stress can reduce quality and encourage early bolting. Harvest baby leaves, or take the outer leaves from loose leaf plants. Sow small batches rather than committing the whole packet to one hot afternoon. If the first sowing struggles, the next one may meet cooler conditions. Lettuce is last because it proves the central point. A crop can be fast on paper and still fail if the first days are mishandled. The correct variety, careful germination, and an early harvest stage matter as much as the crop name. You now have 15 possibilities, but your next step is not to plant 15 different crops. Begin by counting your real growing days. Check the frost date and the weather trend. Then choose 2 reliable crops for your conditions. In many gardens, that may be radishes and a quick leafy green. Add 1 crop that can be harvested repeatedly, such as basil or Swiss chard. Then add 1 warm season fruiting crop only if your climate and space make it realistic. Prepare the planting area before the seeds arrive. Remove diseased debris and weeds. Loosen compacted soil. Add finished compost if the bed needs organic matter, but avoid overfeeding. Check drainage. Decide how you will water gently during germination and deeply after the roots develop. Set up shade or insect protection before the plants are damaged, not after. Do not sow every seed on the same day. Save part of the packet for a second small planting. Succession sowing protects the harvest from weather and spreads the work. Label the rows and write down the planting date. When the seedlings emerge, thin them. When leaves, roots, or fruits reach a useful stage, harvest them. Do not wait for a picture-perfect size while quality declines. By Labor Day, the harvest basket may not look the same in every state. One gardener may carry in radishes, arugula, baby kale, mustard, basil, green onions, and chard. Another may add bush beans, cucumbers, zucchini, or okra because the summer stays hot. A northern gardener may already be shifting toward fall greens, while a southern gardener is still harvesting heat-loving pods and fruits. Both can succeed because they chose for their own season. Think back to the empty container or bare row at the beginning. It did not need a perfect plan. It needed a useful crop, planted promptly and cared for through the most vulnerable days. What looked like the end of the summer garden can become a bowl of leaves, a bunch of roots, a handful of herbs, a few tender pods, and perhaps the first fresh fruits. Many small harvests can create a table that feels abundant. The calendar does not decide whether your garden is finished. The crops you choose, the way you start them, and the moment you decide to harvest determine what is still possible. Choose the plants that fit your climate, begin with the space you already have, and give that summer garden one more chance before Labor Day.